Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named ABYSSELL, titled Treehouse. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen on YouTube. Now, as I understand it at this point in time, this is not released, so it's going to be good to sort of check it out. We're going to listen through it from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Just a heads up as well that we're going to be giving the song an overall score out of 10 based on various musical criteria at the end, but for now, let's go. What have we got? Really intriguing tone to the guitars. I recognize that game.
She went through. I hope you passed knowing I loved you. Now I'm stuck in this torturous limbo, but I see you from through the window.
I mean, that's crazy. So is that inferring? Hang on.
That she went through. All wrong, still with family where I belong. And then the crap road trip, leaving that treehouse just for a moment.
So if I understand it correctly, the sister died? Crashing through the treehouse? Because if so, that's horrible. I'm really sorry if you're lost. That's horrific.
Calling my name for days as my parents. I'm thinking of what you would have done, so I look back down, wait till there's no one. I start to try to come down the ladder, snaps and fall to the ground. Felt like I was asleep for a while. I woke up, some things look hostile. I don't recognize where I was, but then I looked up. Our little treehouse withered and broken. How long was I out for this to happen? I felt pain, I felt some torment. Didn't know where I was in the moment. Looking forward, a pillar of light. Everything so dark, but it was so bright. I walked forward, seeing what it was. Took a moment, took one big pause. There you were, lying in the grass with a pile of flowers you pick into a mess. I run for it, I blink of my eye. I went back up, facing to the sky. Feels like everything it's again. What just happened was I just dead. Now I'm back in this empty treehouse. The ladder broken down and crumbled. I didn't ever want to come back down. This is where we were last safe and sound. After you left is when you passed on. After I left is when it all went wrong. I want to be the one that's next. If I die, I'll say I so white the rest. Living is the true torment I go through. I go back to death just to see you. Looking up at where I stood, all there is a broken pile of wood. Paramedic lays my head back down, telling me not to move and that I'm alright now. Taking me back to the hospital. Hope I pass away just a little.
Shit. I hope I pass away just a little. It just finishes so bluntly, doesn't it? We're going to talk about this track more in the conclusion. And so welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named ABYSSELL, titled Treehouse. Now, before we get into it, I just want to mention that I gave this track an overall score of 7.9 out of 10, which is a strong score. There was a lot to appreciate within this, even though a lot of it was quite heavy, and arguably that's even more reason for it to be impactful. But first of all, what do we think this track is about? So I think this track is about Abyssel, their experience when they were young. The father built a treehouse overnight, and then their sister and Abyssel used to hang out in the treehouse. And I think when he left, the sister went through the treehouse and they passed away, as I understand, if I'm not mistaken. And I think what happened is he struggled with that. And he eventually ended up kind of not wanting to leave the treehouse until he absolutely had to when no one was looking. And he fell down and the paramedics basically saved him. And he kind of wished a little bit that he didn't survive so that he could be with his sister. I want to first of all mention just how effective it is that we were just telling the story the entire way through. It's not often you get a track where it's very much a continuous evolving story throughout. The way the music creates this atmosphere and aesthetic almost immediately with the guitar takes and all the other elements, which we'll talk about in a moment, is really effective. But it's the icing on the cake for the lyrics, for the person to be not only sort of like telling that story in a way where it's so methodical and consistent, but also with such expression. We don't just have our sort of main sort of hidden chest voice here. We have a bit of vocal fry occasionally, some sort of harsher vocals as well. We have double tracking of vocal elements as well, and different sort of pitches as well to kind of add certain emphasis to certain parts. And I think that we go between sort of main takes and our lower range with kind of grainy texture to it, and we add our upper range there, almost like we're calling out for that kind of relief there, for that kind of closure, but we never get it. And it's horrific. You can hear the pain in their voice, and it's a very authentic performance because of that. And we have this kind of melody which is repeated a lot of the song. That's very effective because it kind of like gets you into that loop there. But because you're interested in the story, it doesn't become uninteresting. It's kind of very satisfying as you hear more of it as it goes along. So I think, again, it's effective because of the continual storytelling without having to go back to sort of like a main refrain, with also the vocal points being incredibly effective. I think as well, it was the guitar tone specifically. There's this kind of main sort of like overdriven or distorted guitar arpeggio or line that was done a lot of the time, and it was minor oriented, but it had a kind of dusty sort of like vintage feel that almost sort of sounded nightmarish, especially when put with the heavy bass and the drums there. I think the sort of hi-hats, kicks and snares in that part coupled well as kind of an alternate rhythm to what the guitars were doing, with like kind of triplet kind of cicada hi-hats there, just providing a sort of a hip-hop oriented feel there that adds a bit of a more contemporary feel to the edge, or the grunginess of those guitar parts. There's also some like heavily kind of like affected guitar parts, should I say, in like the background of some bits there with the drum and bass focus. So we also adjust those instrumental layers as well, which makes it more impactful. You know, you need to have variation of how the instruments are presented within a piece, especially if there's a continuation of certain sort of bass lines and chord progressions to keep things interesting, even in a track which is within that 2 to 4 minute sweet spot. And with like the kind of ghostliness of that sort of like high sort of synth layer at the start, you kind of get a feeling it's going to be kind of a spooky story. But with like the slow build into the track kind of like cutting into everything, it's a nice sort of well-structured piece that does sort of deliver a sense of connection with what the singer is talking about. So I also want to talk about the studio production as a final point. I think that the way things are leveled in the mix is really effective. There's no weird resonant frequencies. The guitars, any sort of like synth, bass and drums sound clean, and you can easily hear what's going on. There's a bit of like movement of the synth, that kind of upper level stuff between the sides of the headphones, which is kind of neat. It kind of adds a sense of kind of polish to it professionally, knowing they can do that. But it's also, again, that the tracking and the position of the guitar takes, the actual tones and choices for those, knowing how to niche the different textures together without arguing with each other, the side chaining of the kicks and other elements without being too aggressive, the dynamic range on the piece, the change of intensity in certain parts of the song, and like messing with different frequencies responses within different instruments to kind of be a bit more piercing or dramatic, such as the end with the higher kind of riser that goes like at the end before everything kind of fades out. The sound design is solid. And then, of course, the track is nice and low without pumping, so the bus compression and limiting was handled. And I think, and just with the last comment on the vocal takes there, I just think they understood what they were doing in terms of the delivery they wanted for those lines and the expression there. They didn't try to overproduce the vocals. They left kind of raw, organic takes, which I think makes sense considering the subject matter. There's a lot of sizzle to them, which made sense considering the guitar tones. So ultimately, I think this is just a really stellar track. I'm sad, again, genuinely sort of like sad for what they've gone through. I'm sorry for their loss. It's a horrific story, but I think some of the best music, unfortunately, can come from the difficulties, the trials and tribulations that we have there. It comes from the most important places. And I do hope that they can find some closure at some point. And so that's effectively my review of this track from an act named ABYSSELL, titled Treehouse, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias and the YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.